If you need a copy of Justin's video that you just saw, you can see it on our YouTube channel at aPlantBasedDiet.org. And I think all the videos are going to be on our Facebook page too. If you just join our group at veganswfl.org. So up next, I have Dr. Ron Knaus. Let's give a warm welcome to Dr. Knaus. He was the one that asked all the questions previously. He's got some great questions.
Did you get the clicker? Thank you very much, Denise. And first of all, I'd like for everybody to stand up and stretch a little bit. We've all been sitting for a little bit. So if you want to stand up and stretch, that's great. Let me introduce myself. My name is Ron Knaus. I'm a retired physician. I practiced psychiatry and sports medicine for many, many years. I'm from St. Petersburg, Florida, and I became plant-based. Well, first of all, during my life as a physician, I ate all kinds of steaks and fish and cheese and pizzas and everything else. So I wasn't any different than anyone else. And I didn't become plant-based until I retired, though I was very involved with some other programs, such as the Pritikin program, which a lot of athletes had got involved with. You may know that as well. Are you familiar with Nathan Pritikin? Pritikin program. This guy ran Boston. Yay! That's a long trip. Anyway, where are we at here? We'll talk about Alzheimer's disease today, and what I'm going to do is kind of give you, be able to cut your risk for Alzheimer's disease by over 80%. So if we follow everything along here, we'll find some interesting stuff. Part 3, how do you prevent it? Part 2, how do you get it? Part 1, what is it? Let's go through what is it. It's a growing epidemic. It's getting more and more severe as we move along. Alzheimer's is a type of dementia. There are other types of dementia as well. Lewy body, frontal lobal, Pick's disease, Crutchfield-Jacob dementia, which is mad cow disease. So yes, you can die from eating meat in other ways other than just getting saturated fat and cholesterol. It's a worldwide disease. I'm going to go through this pretty rapidly, so try to stay with me if you can. Now, everybody is very worried about the genetic profile. It runs in the family. My grandmother had it, so I'm probably going to get it. Not true. The concept in medicine is that, yes, your gun may be loaded, but you have the opportunity to pull the trigger. And that means that if you follow a plant-based lifestyle with exercise and all the other components, you probably will not get Alzheimer's, even though it runs in the family. Now, there's another component about the genes that we'll talk about in a minute. The problem with Alzheimer's is that it's rapidly increasing dramatically throughout the world, and it's going to increase more and more. So we're in some very serious situations here. It's a chronic neurodegenerative disease. In other words, your brain neurons are dying. It's gradual, progressive. There are 2 types, basically, early onset and late onset. Early onset is usually in the 40s. It's rare, probably less than 5%. Late onset is 60 beyond. It increases in age. If you're 85, this is an old slide, and so it's now gone up to 1 in every 2 individuals if you're 85. There are some signs of, it's the 6th leading cause of death. It's the 6th leading cause of death. Now, it is probably much higher. It's probably the 3rd leading cause of death, because in Alzheimer's disease, one of the problems is most of them die from other causes because their body is shutting down. The nerves to the throat, swallowing mechanism die up and become eliminated, and thus the individual is unable to swallow. They swallow food into the lung capacity, and then they get pneumonia and die. So most of Alzheimer's patients don't die from Alzheimer's. They die from some other physical. Where are we at?
started here.
Once I lose my track, yes, sir.
What do you think about a vegan who eats, obviously, only plants, and the omega-3 or B12 lack and dimensional?
Well, one of the other doctor earlier today talked about omega-3, and I don't know if there's a strong connection with omega-3 and Alzheimer's. I'm not sure of that. I really can't answer your question because it's too detailed for me to understand and comprehend. Not that I can't understand and comprehend it, but it just doesn't make sense. One of the problems is that we tend to gravitate toward individual substances as a curative, when in reality, whole foods are much better for you because you get a wide range of nutrients all across the board. So what we're seeing is the marketing aspect. They'll start gravitating toward individual things. I saw over here a booth that said test your antioxidant level. I think we're getting a little far afield somewhat on those kind of things. So I think the real key is to understand that if you eat whole foods, you're going to be a whole lot better off. And as far as B12, I take B12 about once a week. Do I take D3? No, I don't take D3 at all because I live here in Florida. I'm outside a lot and I kind of walk a lot. I'm out in the sun a lot, so no, I don't take that. Where are we at? Ronald Reagan died at 93 with Alzheimer's disease, 4 A's. I'm going to go through that pretty quick. This is what physicians look for: amnesia, aphasia, agnosia, and one other, apraxia. Remember Glenn Campbell? He showed all of those during his last tour. He knew he had been diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and he did a tour. And one of the songs that he made was "I'm Not Going to Miss You." It was a very interesting life story. He has now passed away at 81. Signs and symptoms: noticeable changes in thinking, memory, and behavior. Those are the 3 areas that Alzheimer's had. Usually starts with memory. We begin to lose track of names, locations. Those are the first things, and then it begins to expand after that. So the treatment. This was the difficult period of time for me in medicine. In treating Alzheimer's patients, we really had virtually no treatment. And that I retired about 6 years ago. So what's new? Well, not a lot. The medications all modulate the neurotransmitters, usually acetylcholine or glutamate. But the problem is namenda-residine, Exelon, Aricept, and Cognex are basically ineffective after about 6 months, and many of them have side effects. So the treatment for Alzheimer's is very difficult. It's usually isolation, protection. So at age 85, that 1/3 has now changed already to 1/2. Let's go back to the genetic aspect. Here's the genetic profile. If you have the ApoE gene and both your parents have it, you will have a 10 times risk of getting Alzheimer's disease. If you have one parent, you have 4 times the risk. But remember, the gun is loaded. You have the opportunity to pull the trigger. If you have any elevated heart disease, elevated A1C, or type 2 diabetes, your potential for Alzheimer's disease increases dramatically. I believe diabetes will double your chances. And the higher BMI, in other words, heavy-set people have a much higher risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. And that's the problem that we have here in the United States. 2/3 of our population is overweight. 1/3 is obese. That's obese. By the way, did you know that being obese is a medical diagnosis? I believe it was 2013, the AMA made obesity a medical diagnosis. So, this last sentence here is incredibly important because we're different today than where we came from. Eating animals, sedentary lifestyles, stress, loneliness, and retirement have no evolutionary basis. We're not designed to live in the environment that we live in today. We're not designed to live in concrete houses. We miss grass, we miss earth, we miss the air. We're a different animal. Let's take a look at how do you get it. Risk factors. It's a scary disease. So here we're going to show you how to cut your risk up to 80%. Risk factors for coronary disease are the same. So what are the risk factors for coronary heart disease? We all are vegans. What's the risk factors? Absolutely. What is it? Cholesterol. Yeah, cholesterol, saturated fat. All the animal products. Did you know that there's no cholesterol in plants? Good news is lifestyle behaviors. This is the key. Lifestyle behaviors. Now, lifestyle behaviors can either lead you into dementia or it can lead you into another area. Here we have a lady who says, "What do you mean animal products are good for me? I'm 32 and I feel perfectly fine." And that's what we're facing today. We see a lot of our people in the United States that are heavy, overset. They don't exercise. They're not active. They don't sleep well. Problems. This is a risk factor slide prepared for medical presentations. I've altered it and I want to change it, so I've made it a little bit simpler. Here's a slide that I found that shows the different areas. And we take a look. The key area here is the lifestyle area. This one right here. These other areas are important, but the lifestyle we are finding has much more importance to our disease process than any other factor. So some points to ponder. What illness impacts Alzheimer's? Why is that slide important? Diabetes, type 2 diabetes, because we're eating all the animal products, is one of the increasing illnesses that we're seeing in medicine today. It's rapidly growing, type 2 diabetes. By the way, Alzheimer's disease is also being called type 3 diabetes because of some insulin resistance. Gender impact, 2/3 of Alzheimer's patients are women. Half the people that get it don't know it. First of all, I recall many individuals being brought into the office, and during the interview, the person being brought in to be interviewed was not aware that they had dementia or confusion or Alzheimer's. So it's usually family members who make that kind of interpretation and seek out a diagnosis. Estelle Getty, remember Estelle Getty? She was Sophia on the Golden Girls. She died of Alzheimer's disease at age 75. So it's the sixth leading cause of death. We think it's actually the third leading cause of death. So some more points. Caregivers. Now here's an interesting aspect. Caregivers of Alzheimer's patients have a high rate of getting what disease? Alzheimer's. They have a high rate of getting the same disease. Now, some people think that's because they're taking care of someone with Alzheimer's. In reality, that's not true. They are taking care of someone with Alzheimer's. That's not the cause. The cause is usually the fact that the caregiver has usually been the spouse for many, many years. They've lived the same lifestyle. So lifestyle factors are the contributing factor. And we'll get to that in just a minute. So in 1905, Elise Alzheimer's was given a patient. Her name was Augusta Dieter. She was about 51 years old. She had Alzheimer's, though he didn't know that at the time. She died 5 years later. He did the autopsy, and at that autopsy, he found beta amyloid plaques and tau fibrils. Those are the components that give the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Now, he discovered Alzheimer's in 1905. We now are well over 100 years past, and the pharmaceutical industry has not come up with any kind of medications. So it's a non-treatable disease. Huge lack of support systems for the caregivers. If you want some information, a place for moms is probably a good screening spot. I have no connection with them. I just like their site. John Hopkins did a study and found out that our eating patterns and lifestyle patterns can develop tall fibrils 30 years prior to the diagnosis of Alzheimer's. Meaning, our body is a pretty resilient little creature. If we treat it right, it will make us quite happy. So let's go to form and function. Here we are, modern day man. We were never designed to live like this. In the 1800s, now when I was a little kid, I used to spend the summers with my grandparents on their farm in outside of Logansport, Indiana. They raised hogs, corn, and a few chickens. On the farm, we ate meat once a week, and it was usually chicken on Sunday. Today, people are eating meat at least 3 times a day, and maybe 4. We've made a real impact on dairy. Now we've got to make that same impact on meat. We have to survive. So 80% of us lived in urban areas, and most feel that our feet have never touched the ground. This is ridiculous. We are an earth animal. First of all, I want you to all to realize that we are an animal. There are only 2 forms of life on earth, plants and animals. We are an animal. Plain and simple, we just don't have the fur. But we are an animal. We have messed up everything. Our food, our diet, everything. So, let's take a look on how to prevent it. What are the guidelines? See, this is kind of interesting because I'm going to give you guidelines. Now, in all the research that I've done over Alzheimer's, almost every site will tell you the same thing. I'll click it up here, and they all say the same thing. And it's kind of interesting. Although Alzheimer's disease has no cure, you can make the best of a bad situation by keeping your mind and your body as healthy as possible. This can include eating a healthy diet, getting regular exercise, cutting down on alcohol, and using relaxation techniques to reduce stress. They're telling someone after they get Alzheimer's that this is what you do. That's what you do before you get Alzheimer's. If you pay attention to that, that's exactly the same thing that will keep you away from having Alzheimer's. But we'll go into a little more detail on that in just a minute. So the causes of Alzheimer's, Western diet, without a doubt. The next 3 I don't talk about, but I'm going to pass through pretty quick because it's about the cholesterol component. We now know that cholesterol can pass through the bloodstream into the brain. We thought the brain barrier had blocked us, but now we know different. So here we are, insulin resistant is type 3 diabetes. We think because of the insulin resistance, it blocks the ability for our oxygen and glucose to enter the cells to function as energy. Associated injuries, traumatic encephalopathy, football players get this a lot. We've seen this a lot. They also develop Parkinson's disease and Lou Gehrig's disease. Parkinson's, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and Alzheimer's disease. Alzheimer's disease can only be diagnosed at autopsy, though some of our imaging techniques are beginning to get really sophisticated, and so that this may not be totally true. Remember Sugar Ray Robinson? He was a boxer. He died at 67, one of the greatest boxers in the history of boxing. But it's not a good sport. It's not an easy sport. Can you? I watch. Anybody watch these cage fighters where they're inside the cage and it's called tap out? You know, if you get in trouble, you tap out and the referee stops the fight. I can't imagine any worse sport for the impairment of neurological functioning than having your head hit a number of times, both with feet, hands, and then for somebody to grab you around the neck and choke you until you can barely tap out. That's got to be the stupidest sport in the world. I'm sure that these fighters are going to have serious neurological problems later on, and probably pretty soon. It just doesn't make sense. So some major changes. We find that physical activity for people with dementia is incredibly important. The food supply, totally different today. Totally different. Full of saturated fat, cholesterol, things that aren't good. Stress, a constant companion. Think of prehistoric man. How much stress did they have? Hardly any. This idea of a saber-toothed tiger being there at your front door all the time? Ridiculous. Doesn't happen. They lived a very quiet, peaceful life. They roamed the countryside looking for fruit, tubers, bark, few insects, things of that nature. They were strong. They could outrun. They could outdo anything that any of us could do. They were powerful creatures because they lived in nature. Loss of social contact, we have a major loss of family structures. My wife and I continue to fight on who has the most dysfunctional family. So far, I'm ahead by one cousin, Chris. Insomnia. You don't sleep well, you don't do well the next day. So, let's take a look. Here are the behaviors that you can follow that will help you stay away from dementia and Alzheimer's. Nutrition. Americans, they eat the standard American, we eat the standard American diet, which has spread now throughout the world because it's convenient. Why does it spread? Why is it so good? What makes it spread throughout the world? What's the one thing that makes standard American diet cheap? It's tasty. Absolutely. It tastes great. Absolutely. Can you imagine eating a piece of pizza and the cheese running down? Oh. Well, cheese, that's another story. So, let's take a look. Exercise. We're probably the weakest society around. 95% of us could do a lot better. Sleep, major disruption. Sleeping pills. Stress, no relief. Social. So those components have led a physicians group to form. They formed probably about 10 years ago, and they are the one physicians group that if you need a physician, see if they're not a member of this group. American College of Lifestyle Medicine. They put in a number of factors, and I'm going to give you their 5 themes that they focus on. They focus on exercise. Everybody familiar with the Blue Zones? Blue Zones were a group of, they were different areas of the world found by a writer, journalist for National Geographic, and every time he came across one of these groups, he would circle it with a blue pen, and he called that the Blue Zones. And those individuals have a very basic, simple lifestyle. They work until they're 100 years old or older. They eat basic foods, non-smokers, usually non-drinking. By the way, the Mediterranean diet has gotten a lot of information, a lot of promotion as a great diet. What makes it great? What makes it great is that it's a family-oriented kind of lifestyle where you eat long, leisurely meals, casual, and a lot of fruits and vegetables. The idea that adding a lot of oil is, it balances out. But we're finding oil is not nearly as effective as we thought it was. My wife and I went oil-free about 2.5 years ago. And I think the toughest part for us to do was for my wife to convert from cooking with olive oil into cooking with water. But it can be done, and it's very easy, actually. We took a nutrition course online called ROUX. Must be Roo. Anyway, it was fun, and I learned a lot. I think we have to learn where the kitchen is. That's another story. So let's go back. Sleep, insomnia, drugs, supplements, tech gadgets, they don't work. Huge. Stress. Unhealthy foods, substances and behaviors, substances, alcohol, smoking, vaping. Smoking is still one of the world's major problems, and all the studies are now showing that people who work consistently in jobs in office buildings behind desks and they don't smoke, is that I have 5 minutes? These people that don't smoke, but they're sitting 6 to 8 hours a day, and then they go home and they get on the computer, sit a few more hours. It's considered the new smoking. So sitting, if you sit as long as most people do in the United States today, its aspect of relating to disease process is equal to smoking. So we got to get off our butts. We really have to. Now, the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, the one area that they have really moved into that no other aspect of medicine has done is this one right here, prevention. This is the key. That's the key to almost every disease that we've found. By the way, you know, there's a lot of complaints about doctors not knowing this, not knowing that, not treating me, not recommending a plant-based diet. Doctors are not trained in that field. They're trained to treat disease. So unless you have a disease, there's probably really no reason for you to go to a doctor. That's kind of interesting. And yet we go to the doctor asking them, how did I get that disease? What do I do to prevent it? Most doctors are not plant-based oriented. However, there's a strong movement that some of us are beginning to turn the corner. We're seeing the light, and yes, we have become plant-based. All right, our society is a trap. So we got to be careful. Once we learn that we're living in an environment that is destructive to us, we have to do something about it. So the 5 areas: nutrition, exercise, sleep, social, and substance abuse. That's all you have to do. Piece of cake, huh? Thanks very much. Anybody having questions that I can answer about? Thank you.
Anyone have any questions for Dr. Knaus? We have a minute.
You better tie your shoelace.
I know.
That's good. My mother has early dementia, and I just only recently got her to start eating differently. How long do you think it might take before she starts feeling differently?
Dr. Dean Ornish is doing this study in California right now, in San Francisco. They're trying to determine if this type of program here, basically without medication, can reverse and prevent mild cognitive dementia. So whatever she's doing, head in that direction. You can't go wrong at this point. By the way, this idea that moving to a plant-based diet and exercise and all these other components, we're beginning to heal diseases. We're able to heal type 2 diabetes, cardiac diseases, and we think we're on the cusp of many other diseases as well. So this, going back to nature, you can't go wrong.
Yeah. Thank you, Dr. Knaus. Let's give him a round of applause. Okay, if you'd like to see a recording of this presentation, you can find it on our YouTube channel with aPlantBasedDiet.org. You can also join our group if you'd like to see more speakers at upcoming Veg Fest. Just go to veganswfl.org. So up next, we have Nikki Benoit. Is that how I say the last name? Benoit? Okay, sorry, I'm bad with